They call it the millennial pause. And I just did it. Dad, have you ever heard of the millennial pause?
Nope.
So pause as in Pause, like the pause button. So I came of age in an era where I grew up with technology as it was happening. I was part of that move from the analog age to the digital age. I know both worlds. I'm your classic older millennial, younger Gen X person. And when we started doing smartphone videos, understood that you had to wait a couple or 3 seconds for the video to start recording,
Is that why you
which
do what you do? I didn't know that.
yeah, so technology's caught up. You don't have to do that anymore.
I
But
wondered why you wait.
if you watch older millennials record themselves doing things like on this podcast, they will wait 1 or 2 seconds and then start talking. And it is
I
called
wondered. I
the
wondered.
millennial pause. It's one of those fillers. In this case, it's not an actual word, it's silence. And Gen Z really makes fun of us for doing it. You can always tell it's the millennial. Of course, we're getting of age now, where it's just like we're just older, so you know that we are millennials. But millennial pause. We got some other killer fillers.
Color fillers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Like really. We've got a few that we're going to be talking about why it impacts speaking, particularly preaching.
And
But before
so
we
you
do,
notice I have not listed like in here because we're talking mainly about what comes from the pulpit.
okay.
And like is more in conversation, particularly like with younger people as they talk about like things that they like to, well, like you understand?
I do now. And I certainly want to thank our sponsor, Tyndale. They've got this great Bible for moms. And that's where you can go to check it out. BibleForMoms.com. Love that URL, by the way. Excellent work, Tyndale. Good job, team, on BibleForMoms.com. This is the Dayspring Daily Devotional Bible for Moms, created for real moms with real life joys and real life challenges. So it's got short daily devotionals that will help your mom deepen awareness of God's presence and bring her closer to peace, which every mom needs, wisdom, which every mom has, strength, of course, every mom has that, encouragement, which you need to encourage your mother, truth, and more. Love this Bible. It is a great gift for your mom. So go to BibleForMoms.com and go get your mother something nice. That's
Hey,
what you need to do. Or
with
your wife,
with your
or your
Mother's
sister who's a mom. It could be any woman in your life who is a mom.
with Mother's Day on the horizon. I don't know why your mom and I were having this conversation, but we were, and it was today, the day we're recording this, and we got on the conversation when it was most difficult for her to be a mom. Do you want to predict what she said? Do you have any idea?
Middle school?
Close. You're really close. Ages 15, 16, and 17. Coming out of middle school, going into high school, asserting independence, asserting stubbornness, being rude, uh, being hurtful at times. But they said by the senior year, all three of you boys were perfect gentlemen. I said, what happened? They know they're leaving because we were pretty clear to all of our three boys. Hey, we love you being a part of this house. We love you. And once you get to be 18, you're gone. Do you understand that? You're gone.
I have very vivid memories of that and fears of like, oh my goodness, if I don't get my life together, I'm going to be on the street, which you would not have allowed. I know that you would not have allowed that,
I never
but that
thought
was
of
what
it.
was in my brain. That
I'm
was what
not
was
going to
there.
tell your mom that. She will have guilt trips for years.
It worked. It worked. Yeah, I remember that. You put everything in my name. I had to pay my own bills. I had
That's
my
a
own. I
check
had my own
balance your
apartment.
checkbook. You don't
Yeah,
have
my own
overdraft.
checkbook, my own apartment, my own online investment account. I had my little mailbox at my apartment. With my key. I still remember all of that. I remember getting broken into, and they didn't take anything, which was really insulting to me. That's how poor. That's how poor I came back from a weekend trip. The door was busted in. I'm like, oh no, they broke in, and I'm looking through all my stuff. I'm like, they did not take one thing. So I wanted them to get caught, not because they took something, but the police came. I called and reported it, and they said, "Well, what did they take?" I said, "Nothing." It was like, okay, but they did damage to the door, which the landlord took care of. So anyway, that's completely off topic, but there you go. There's a
Well, it was on
little,
topic to the sponsorship of the devotional and Mom's Day. So
yeah,
now we're
there
going
you
to get
go.
back to these killer fillers.
Killer fillers. We all do them. We all have them, and it is something that I have struggled with. Like I communicate all the time. I'm on a podcast. I just said it. This is why I did not want to do this episode
Because we're going to be so
because
focused on everything that we're saying in this episode, and we know that we're going to do a killer filler ourselves.
I know. It's just one of these
Same way.
things. Like I'm going to do an episode on word fillers, and I'm going to use all of them without even thinking about it.
Yes.
Uh, but there's another one. So it's important. This is something that we all need to pay attention to. And Dad, let's just walk through these. In other words, walk us through some of these before I just completely stumble over all of my own filler words.
And ah are boomer quintessential, and you will get those from my generation, probably from predecessor generations, greatest generation, the builders. Uh, did you hear that?
I know it's gonna be awful. This is gonna be like unlistenable and unwatchable.
It's a filler. You don't have the words to say at the moment. So instead of being silent and just capturing the moment, you fill it with and The younger generation fills it with like in their conversation, but we're talking about pastors this time. Usually a pastor doesn't get in the pulpit and say, like we were going like, and it was like is more common at the younger generations. And still with my generation is very common. What do you do? Listen to yourself. That's the key. You'll never overcome it, but listen to yourself.
I write out portions of my sermon as well. Some people manuscript. I'm not a manuscripter, just because I would struggle with uh, getting through a manuscript because my mind wanders and I want to talk about something else. And I'll tell my people, I'm like, I said, this is not in my notes. I will say that out loud. You're about to get some bonus material because it just popped in my brain. So I don't manuscript, but there are portions of my sermon that I write out a sentence or two to make sure that I express it clearly. And by writing out portions of my sermon in certain sections, what it does is it keeps me in a rhythm so that I don't start using fillers. Here's the thing, you're going to use them. They're almost imperceptible if they're minimized. Hardly
Minimizes the
anyone,
key. You will not
yeah,
eliminate them.
you can't eliminate them because the brain has to fill that spot with something. And particularly when we're on air, like dead air or silence is not good. People turn up their radios. What's going on. Um, there, I just did it. So silence is not the best option, but the goal is to minimize the words. I love your suggestion of just listening to yourself. It's torture to do that. I realize it.
Do it once a
You
month.
Yeah, you don't have to do it every week. And then I recommend writing out portions of your, particularly if we're talking like preaching, but any kind of speaking. And even if you're not manuscripting, at least you have those parts of your sermon where you are putting yourself into a rhythm.
I remember a conversation when I was at Lifeway. Brad Wagner was serving alongside me at Lifeway, and we had a fellow executive team member who is actually older than us, which may seem weird because we're so old now, but this was many years ago. His favorite, usually together or close together, was in other words, you know, all the time. His conversation, in other words, finally Brad just shouted at him, "No, I don't know, and you haven't given me any other words."
That's funny. That's really funny. Now you've got something else in here in the notes, and I took note of this, where part of a killer filler in public speaking is not just the words, in other words, like it's also making the illustration more than the main content of your sermon, or in the case of public speaking, more than whatever the subject matter is. If you're a life group leader or teacher, talking about other things outside of the main point. So expand upon that a little bit.
Well, this is one of the reasons that I am so grateful that most of my sermons were not online, that you have to really scrape hard to find some of those cassettes that are still around, because I did this quite often. I would get into an illustration and I would illustrate the illustration that had illustrations and sub illustrations. And I would just go on and on about the illustration, so much so at times that I forgot what my point was. And usually I was preaching from an envelope or the back of an envelope. And so it'd be kind of hard to look at it and go that. So I was as guilty as it can be. This is where the illustration, which is supposed to highlight the meaning of the text, becomes the theme in itself instead of the text being expounded. You're expositing your own illustration. And so we put here illustration greater than main content. That's the greater sign there.
I like that. Stop expositing your illustration.
I,
The illustration should point to the main thing. And you know, if people remember your illustration more than the main point, that's a problem.
you have messed up with the main point.
That's very true. Now, you also talk about weather reports. What do you
Oh,
mean by that?
this is so horrendous. And this can be any public speaker. Any, and I don't know if I want to pick on them, but I'm going to do it. Worship leaders are terrible with this. Worship, not all of them. Jordan's fine. Not all of them. But worship leader usually opens the service and they'll say, glad to have you here. Isn't it a beautiful day outside? It's been cold and now it's warm. And boy, it's been a sunny day. And I'm thinking, I know what the weather is. Shut up. Quit giving me a weather report.
I just came in from the outside. You know, I just had this idea of somebody needs to do a skit. Someone needs to produce some sort of short, if you will, where the worship leader starts leading worship and does this, but then they end up in front of a green screen where then they just give the weather report. Because you're right. So many worship pastors are guilty of this. It's like, welcome to West Bradenton. Boy, it's cold outside. And then they just move right into, and there's a front coming through, and we should expect temperatures lower than normal over the next 7 days.
And the reason worship leaders are often guilty of it is because they open many of the services and they don't have
Right.
a natural open to it. And instead of preparing for the opening, just had a worship leader at one time. He said, stop giving weather reports. Just stop it. And he said, what you're doing is you're saying you're not prepared for the first part of your worship. You're doing a filler.
Great idea there. Okay. This next one. I cannot stand this. This next one is by far the most annoying. The ums and the uhs, everyone does them. The whole point is to minimize them. I want to outlaw this phrase. I want to completely outlaw it. I want to abolish it from the English language. And I want to severely punish anyone who uses it on a regular basis, even though I'm guilty. I'm guilty. Super excited. Stop saying
I am super
super
excited to see you. I'm super
excited.
excited to be here. No, you're not. You're not
I'm
super
super
excited.
excited about it. It's like, that is the new filler that everybody uses. And I cannot tell you how many times I've seen a church promo with a lead pastor who is actually a skilled communicator, good at what they do. And how do they start this church promo?
We are
We
super,
are
super excited.
super excited to announce the men's discipleship group. We are super excited to announce this new initiative. We're super excited that you are here today. Let's abolish this word, this phrase. I'm super excited to abolish it. Super excited. That's what I want to do.
Are we able to do executive orders and everybody follow us and just so we're abolishing super excited?
Nothing is, we actually have a subscription to press releases. We can issue press releases from Church Answers. We should just start doing that. We should start doing Church Answers executive orders and release them as press releases and see if anyone pays attention. I don't think they will, unfortunately.
We'll get a few cards and letters, but not a whole lot of them. But that is a new opening. It's a new filler. And I'm like you when I hear it. I said, you know what? You're not excited, and you're especially not super excited.
And here's the thing: somebody who has some of our resources is going to remember that you or I said it at some point, and because we're recorded, everything we say. Listen, we're on air so much,
We're guilty of
whether
this.
whether it be one of our podcasts or digital resources, they're going to clip it and they're going to send it to us and say, "Guys, yeah, hot calling the kettle black." Is that the
And we
phrase?
are. We are. Uh,
Yes.
there was when I used to
Anyways,
write. Well,
anyways,
when I would write about grammatical mistakes, someone would inevitably, in the blog comments, go back and find some of my own and write them out.
I will say AI is helpful here. I'm not a big fan of AI being used to generate quote unquote new content. That's impossible. AI is always derivative. We did a whole webinar on that a couple of years ago, and I think I went on a terrible rant that I am not ashamed of at all. It's a giant plagiarism machine, is what it is. But there are good uses of AI, and one of those is programs like Grammarly. I think it's a good one. Not a sponsor of today's episode, but hey, Grammarly, give us a call. We use you all the time. So there are some ways to improve upon the written form. And sometimes these word fillers can find their way into the written form.
Yep. Yeah, I use AI for proofreading, and usually it's the Grammarly AI that I use. It helps, and I inevitably find mistakes. You know what my most common mistake is when I write?
Passive tense, too much passive tense.
That is definitely, if you call that a mistake, I just think that that is some type of totalitarian despot that has decided passive tense is not acceptable. No, mine is very simple. I leave off words. My mind is thinking when my fingers are not moving.
I'm guilty of that as well. And how can you tell if something is AI? Uh, Overuse of the M-EM, which I love the M dash, and I hate that the programmers put it into AI because now my writing looks like AI because I used to use the M dash a lot.
What's M dash?
Uh,
I don't even know what that is.
there's an N dash EN,
Yeah.
and that's the shorter. It's not a hyphen, so there's three levels here: hyphen, N dash, and M dash. When
Don't know
you're
that.
using a dash to separate parts of a sentence, you
Mm-hmm.
use the M dash, the longest of the dashes. So AI uses that a lot. AI overuses the active tense. AI
Making it sound
overuse
awkward.
it does it very awkward. AI overuses inclusive language. There are times for that, but AI way overdoes
Now,
it
I've actually turned that down to almost zero on the settings.
because you asked it to. He said,
Yes.
"Stop doing that." Right? You
Right.
just tell
Well,
Franklin,
it's
your
just not,
AI bot.
it's not that I'm against recognizing that different genders can possibly do this, whatever that is. And I'm not talking about pastoral, whatever. And sometimes he or she is fine to say, but it was absolutely overusing it, and it was making me want to vomit on it.
I still think it is proper to say he or she
Why
when
not?
I'm writing. Well, there's plenty of people who don't think so, but I'm going to hold firm on that one. I'm also going to hold firm on the Oxford comma. All of you
Oh, I love my
terrorists,
Oxford comma.
all of you terrorists who leave off the Oxford comma,
I
shame
don't
on
even
you.
recognize you as a writer if you have decided the Oxford comma is not a part of your repertoire.
I think we could just call this episode rants from Tom and Sam.
Yeah. Grammar. Can I even say Nazi anymore? Grammar
Be
Nazi.
careful. This is on YouTube. We might get. We're not monetized. I could say we get demonetized. Yeah, you gotta be careful with certain words on YouTube. They don't like them. But
I
hey,
mean,
you know what? You know what you don't have to be careful about at all.
what is that?
Upward.
I love my upward. Anyways, I do.
Anyways, that's the last one that we have in the list. Anyways, let's talk about Upward. They've got sports recreation for kids, Dad. This is really exciting and a new program that's pickleball. So tell us more.
I have said repeatedly, redundantly, maybe to the point of boredom for some and irritation to others, but I don't think so. How much I love what Upward is doing. Upward has been around for a long time. They've been a ministry that has gotten into the community through sports leagues again and again and again. I am discovering more and more how effective that is. And so I get, shall I say, super excited. I am thrilled that Upward has such a ministry when many churches are lacking. How do we reach our community? Well, they're going to organize a sports league for you, and it is going to be absolutely incredible. Whether you have a gym, parking lot, or you just borrowing a field from somewhere, they can set up your sports league. For example, the 5K, that's one of their new ones. You don't have to have it really anything, Sam. They'll tell you how to set up signs, get permission from city officials, how to organize it, how to time it. They'll do all of those things for you because they're so good at it. But then you said it. This one is the one that is just turning the whole universe around. Pickleball has come to Upward, and so there you go. Thank you, Upward. My contact, and Sam, I think you met Jennifer McCraw before I did. And she's incredible. The whole team at Upward is incredible, but we thank Upward for what they're doing. And it is time to discover pickleball. So they introduced running and pickleball in the same year.
They are on it. They are on it like Blue Bonnet, as the saying says. I don't think that's in their marketing copy, but I'll throw that in there. There's some filler for you.
And I don't think Jennifer will add it to her marketing copy, but they appreciate your heart for that. I appreciate the heart of all of you who are a part of Rainer on Leadership. Some of you are listening on your favorite podcasting app. Give us a rating and review. Some of you are watching us on YouTube. Subscribe. Tell others about us. Give us a thumbs up. Can you do the thumbs up on this, Sam, where like on Zoom, it makes different types of, I don't guess so.
No, the podcasting software doesn't do that. There are times, though, I think it's Zoom, where you'd give the thumbs up and it
just
the
balloons everywhere.
Emoji, yeah.
And thank you, as always, for being a part of Rainer on Leadership, longstanding podcast, hundreds of podcasts over the years. We thank you for our audience, and we hope you'll keep on joining us every week, twice a week, at Rainer on Leadership. See you soon.